as all of us know, The Elder Scrolls 6 is gonna be an absolute disaster. It's gonna be one of the worst things to happen in gaming in the past 20 years. Easy. There is no world where Elder Scrolls 6 even comes remotely close to the word's success. Listen, on a fundamental basis, The Elder Scrolls 6 will never be able to succeed just off of one simple fact. Let's ignore the fact that it's going to be bad in general. Let's ignore the fact that it's probably going to be extremely woke on top of everything. Let's assume it's actually a playable, not buggy game that people kind of like. Even if that happens, it's still going to be a disaster. And you know why? Because so much time has passed, and people want it so bad. They want it to be the next big thing. On a pure fundamental level, the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a disaster because there is no way it ever lives up to the hype, even if it's not that bad of a game. And the thing is, it's gonna be a bad game. Everything that we have seen that Bethesda has done in the last 10 years has been a joke, a disaster. They made Redfall, they made Starfield, and then they made the expansion to Starfield in which they said, no, everything that we do is good, and now excuse me as I go make the story for Elder Scrolls 6. Yes, the same losers, the same idiots, the same incompetent people who made Starfield and then shattered space and doubled down on all the mistakes they made are gonna be making Elder Scrolls 6. Again, even if the game is good, it's gonna fail because there's no way to live up to the expectations. And now that it's gonna be bad, well, this is gonna be the greatest disaster in gaming in the last 20 years. It's shaping up to be one of the crown jewels of I told you so in a long, long time.
Leading up to the 2025 Xbox Summer Showcase, we had a bunch of weird leaks around the Elder Scrolls 6. Many were speculating, or even just saying there was a chance that an Elder Scrolls 6 trailer could appear at this showcase. And things got pretty wild here. We even had a 7 million subscriber police body cam YouTuber comment on a Mr. Matty Plays video that, yeah, Elder Scrolls 6 trailer was coming. And it seems like this wasn't all just hot air. There might have been something actually underlying all of this, as Jez Corden has been hearing more Elder Scrolls 6 rumors as of late.
So the reason I wanted to predict that is because I've started hearing rumors about it.
Listen, I can also predict that soon we're gonna be seeing an Elder Scrolls 6 trailer. And if I keep saying this for a year or two, I literally cannot be wrong, okay? It's not impressive to say one thing for 2-3 years straight, and then when everyone knows it's gonna happen at some point, you're suddenly right. Not really impressive.
About the game.
Ooh.
Which suggests to me that more people at Microsoft are privy to it.
But of course, nothing happened. The Xbox Showcase ended with no Elder Scrolls 6, so what is actually going on here? Now thanks to
They didn't even, by the way, show anything from Starfield. The reality of the situation is Microsoft is dreadfully regretting spending $9 billion, yes, billion, on acquiring Bethesda. Blizzard already is a failure. Diablo 4 was an absolute bust. World of Warcraft, the lowest retention numbers in forever. And, well, everything else that Blizzard has made has been shit. Overwatch is dying and whatnot. And Bethesda's doing worse than that. Imagine doing worse than every game that you have is failing. Because Bethesda is making new things, and all of those new things are swiftly thrown into the garbage by literally 99.9% of the player base.
Years of past interviews and even some new leaks, we definitely know something about this game, such as a pretty solid window as to when the Elder Scrolls 6 might be coming out. The Elder Scrolls 6 was first mentioned as in the works by Bethesda all the way back in 2016, and a first look at this game came only shortly thereafter in 2018, with this now 7-year-old teaser. As of late, I've been seeing a lot of fans get angry about this trailer, asking themselves why did Bethesda drop this trailer so early if the game was still years away? But even back in 2018, we actually had some answers around this, with Pete Hines saying so that people didn't.
So people get hyped for Starfield. This trailer was meant so people look at Bethesda, and then it's like, Starfield! And, well, we know how that ended.
Start spinning off on like that's the end of single-player games from Bethesda Game Studios. And it seems like Todd Howard might even
listen. To contextualize if you don't know how absolutely devastatingly bad Starfield is. Most people who bought Starfield got the expansion for free, Shattered Space. And when Shattered Space dropped, I don't exactly remember the player count for Starfield then, but it was something like below 10k. Let's say like 7 or 8, whatever. And when Shattered Space dropped, uh, the average player base did not go up by a lot. It went up by like 1,000 or 2,000, which is up. It's a free expansion. People didn't even come back for the free expansion. That's how devastatingly bad Starfield was. And Shattered Space actually made it worse.
Even have some regret around this trailer. In 2023, GQ asked if he regretted announcing when they did. I've asked myself that a lot. I don't know, I probably would have announced it more casually. So while yeah, we have had this trailer for a while now, the release of it really seems to have had a lot more to do with the release of Fallout 76, as opposed to the ongoing development of The Elder Scrolls 6. But when it does come to a release date for The Elder Scrolls 6, one of the most commonly posted things as of late is this Lex Friedman interview with Todd Howard from 2022. During this, Todd Howard basically lays out Bethesda's development timeline.
Was Lex Friedman still around, or did he completely go crazy with his opinions of being the savior of humanity?
And from this information, you can work backwards to try and figure out a rough window of when The Elder Scrolls 6 should be done and releasing. As we do hear that The Elder Scrolls 6 was being concepted as Starfield was being worked on. Prototyping only began on the game around the time Starfield was being wrapped up, and then begins production.
Once we're wrapping up one game, we can really start prototyping the new one, and you're usually building kind of your initial spaces. And so we do like to do like a first playable, a smaller section of the game that we can sort of prove out and show to people, hey, this is how it feels different, this is what it looks like, this is what's unique about it. Then we turn that into a larger chunk when more of the team comes on, when the other game is done. And
all of this sounds cool, but the problem is he's surrounded by yes men.
And that's still what we call a VS, vertical slice. So you still don't have the full team on it. And it's a larger chunk of the game that you can play. And then once you feel good about that, you're going to bring on the rest of the team, where we're sort of at maximum size. We just call that production. That's like the full production.
Okay. Listen, Todd. What do you mean playable base game or whatever? You literally made Starfield, and Starfield has worse inventory management than Fallout 3. It has worse inventory management than all your other games previously. Like, how do you even do that by accident? You could have literally just copy pasted an inventory management system from Skyrim and it would have been better. Yet you didn't. You somehow made it worse. What do you mean happy with what you have in its play? What does that even mean?
Period. And that, depending on the game, can run a year, 2 years, maybe more.
A ton of people have really latched on to that 1 to 2 years of production timeline, many just simplifying it to 2 years of production for Bethesda's games. And basically using this as a rule that we can apply to The Elder Scrolls 6, so if you could figure out when production started, 2 years later, the game should roughly be releasing. And we actually do have a pretty concrete answer on that one. One of the final things Pete Hines did at Bethesda was give this answer during an interview. He was asked, just to be clear, is The Elder Scrolls 6 in pre-production or in a concept phase? No, it is in development, but it is in early development, which many fans are now taking to mean that in August of 2023, just before the release of Starfield, The Elder Scrolls 6 had transitioned from pre-production into its full 2 years on full production, which would actually mean that right around now, in the next couple of months, that production period should be wrapping up. Although there is a gigantic but here. A ton of the posts speculating about a Starfield release date just neglect the very next thing Todd Howard says in this interview. What happens after production finishes?
And then you kind of have a final 6 months to a year on a game, which is, okay, we've built everything now. And usually it needs a lot of glue, where we have a lot of very different elements that maybe aren't clicking together the way you want, outside of the regular polish for levels and features. And we're shaving. And
the fact that Todd Howard unironically uses the word polish it's kind of frightening.
Gluing and sticking things together so that it's not this schizophrenic game experience, that things flow from one into another.
So 2 years of production, but then around 6 months to 1 year of really polish and getting all of those features working together with the game. Todd Howard continues on here to say that it's at this revitalizing stage that the game's flow really comes together and things start to feel good. The features and their importance become clear, and even balancing can occur. But with all that in mind, even if we go for the max of what Todd Howard was describing here of 2 years of production followed by 1 year of revitalizing, that puts us at August 2026, just using the timeline Todd Howard described himself 2.5 years ago. And you could even kinda check this with another clue. In March of 2024, we heard how early builds of the Elder Scrolls 6 exist, which likely is that vertical slice that Todd Howard was referencing in the Lex Friedman interview. Early 2024 was likely around the point where major teams were being shifted from Starfield to now working on the Elder Scrolls 6. And that 2026 number does pop up a few more times. One of the biggest sources for release date leaks and rumors around the Elder Scrolls 6 is Microsoft's FTC trial, where we ended up getting several leaks and just pieces of new information. In the process of uploading a Phil Spencer deposition, Microsoft lawyers accidentally left a bunch of documents attached to that file. That's how we eventually got this leaked Bethesda roadmap that you've almost certainly seen a bunch of times now. Bethesda made this themselves. It was
Everyone just always looks at the roadmap.
done during the buyout process with Microsoft, so in around the summer of 2020. Basically, Bethesda showing Microsoft, hey, this is when we expect products to drop and how much we forecast those products are going to make. And if you do apply a 2-year offset, accounting for COVID as well as some of the other internal delays that came out of all of this,
Okay, so first of all, this is not how businesses work. Bethesda doesn't go to Microsoft and say, hey, this is when we're releasing things. Have a nice day. No. Again, I can't. I honestly can't. How many times do I have to repeat myself? Microsoft bought Bethesda. Todd Howard, thank God, has absolutely no more say with what happens with Bethesda. Microsoft wants him to be the janitor, he becomes the fucking janitor. Microsoft tells him to learn back massages with happy endings, he learns back massages with happy endings. He doesn't get to call the shots, he doesn't get to say what's gonna happen. Again, for example, one of the reasons that we got the Fallout TV show is Microsoft bought Bethesda. If Microsoft didn't buy Bethesda, we would have never gotten the absolute fucking horror show that was the Fallout TV series. But, still. Again, Todd Howard Bethesda doesn't show this to Microsoft and say that, hey, this is how we're planning things. Yeah, very cool. We like it. It's gonna be amazing. No, Microsoft calls these shots. This was maybe Bethesda's plan before. I don't know if it was when this happened. I think this happened before Microsoft officially owned Bethesda. But yeah, Bethesda, the moment Microsoft bought this, none of this mattered anymore. Well, technically, they would still use this because that's not how taking over a company works. But, this does not matter. The moment Microsoft took this over, everything changed a lot. Now, the basic bone structure of this still kind of holds true. But Microsoft calls the shot what actually happened.
Most of these dates have held remarkably true as far as when these products have been dropping, which would put the Elder Scrolls 6 at 2026. I've seen a ton of people.
Also, by the way, this is a fallacy. This is a fallacy. Okay? So, we have games that listen. Let me describe. Let me actually open Paint. Okay. Okay, and there we go. Let me share the screen with you so you can see. I'm gonna explain how this thing works and why people believe it, even though it's not really useful to believe it. Okay, so we have this magical bubble. Okay, you see, you have this, and inside this bubble, there exists everyone's favorite Bethesda. There we go. Bethesda without the D. Bethesda games, okay? And you got your Doom in here nowadays, okay? You got your Fallout in here. You got your Elders ES whatever. You got your Redfall. Ooh, Redfall. Red F, let's call it, okay? You got all of these neat, cool little things. You got your Oblivion remastered, right? And this is inside the Bethesda bubble of games, right? And then you have years. You have the year 20, you got the year 21, you got the year 22, got the year 23, okay? And now these games are just going here to random years on release, okay? These games have nowhere else to go. These games don't have a possibility to go here because all of these games are gonna get released in some year sooner or later. So the fact that these things are off by a year means that all of this is useless to begin with because yeah, these games are gonna release. Everything that they have here in their list of games, switching back to the old one, every game that you see right here, those are all of their games. You have no other choice but to release them in a year, unless you choose to not release them. This is always gonna be right, but it doesn't mean that it's accurate, because this is gonna happen no matter what. It's always gonna happen. Games are gonna be released in years. That's how these things work. You can't get it differently. Of course, this is gonna be correct because these are the games Bethesda owns, and Bethesda releases the games that they own. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy, effectively.
Have been dropping, which would put the Elder Scrolls 6 at 2026. I've seen a ton of people latching onto this, particularly after the release of Oblivion Remastered, which is kind of funny. This roadmap did get the Oblivion release year wrong, even if you add a 2-year offset. And yeah, honestly, I don't think this means much.
See what I mean? The map doesn't mean anything, because those things are gonna get released at some point. It's impossible for them not to get released.
This was made in 2020 and had Bethesda predicting 4 years into the future even then. Obviously, a bunch of these predictions were wrong or inaccurate. That's why the 2-year offset has worked. What I think is more telling is the gaps between releases. What we know is Starfield ended up taking longer than expected. There was of course a global pandemic, but also that engine overhaul ended up taking longer than anticipated. But Bethesda in 2020 was still planning a 3-year gap in between their major releases, which yeah, would put the Elder Scrolls 6 at 2026 with Starfield in 2023. And that
I mean, honestly, I don't know. I don't even know about this one because Indiana Jones was considered to be a major release, and Doom is a major release. Oblivion Mastered is a major release. Saying that Starfield and Elder Scrolls are the only big releases is kind of fucking cheap, if you ask me.
In between their major releases, which yeah, would put the...
And if you consider... And also, this doesn't work because look, you have Starfield right here, and then you have Starfield DLC right here.
Elder Scrolls 6 at 2026 with Starfield in 2023. And that 2026 year pops up 2 more times during this trial. This acquisition roadmap/document came out of the trial. It lists the Elder Scrolls 6 as a 2026 or later game, and very importantly, compared to the roadmap, this was made way more recently. This roadmap's pretty old now. This document's clearly much newer. And on this, they're still predicting at or after 2026, and it's with Starfield's mostly accurate release date. Technically, it says the first half of 2023, while Starfield dropped a few months into half 2. But this shows that even internally, there are some hopes Bethesda could have 3-year gaps between their games. This is a Microsoft internal document, so all of those people saying it must be 5, 6, 7 years between Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6, that's really just not backed up by what we're seeing here. And even a Microsoft lawyer testified that the Elder Scrolls 16 would be releasing in 2026. So now obviously there's a lot going on in that quote, but to me, both of these
16, by the way.
These things suggest that internally, as of 2023, when this trial was going on, Microsoft and Bethesda expected the Elder Scrolls 6 around 2026. I don't think that lawyer was just making up dates, it was likely information they were told by someone, and information that's reflected on this document as well. And at this point, that really summarizes a lot.
I don't think a lawyer who testified in a court hearing made up dates. Oh, really now?
Lots of why people are thinking 2026 or 2027 could be the release date, but not everyone is in this camp. Unfortunately, also during this Microsoft FTC trial, we get the biggest evidence.
What the fuck is this? Is this like mobile or something? Because this looks ass.
against a 2026 release date as Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, took the stand to say The Elder Scrolls 6 is 5+ years away, which would put the earliest possible release date at 2028, and considering this was the head of Xbox testifying under oath, many are just inclined to believe him at face value, that yeah, it's not coming before 2028. And I mean, even in this 2022 interview with Lex Friedman, Todd Howard does lay out timelines.
By the way, that court case was about Microsoft's monopoly if they buy Blizzard and Bethesda, which is kind of hilarious because I don't know if anything's happening here, but yeah, Microsoft lied about a lot of things that they said in that court hearing. They have done a lot of things that they said that they are categorically not gonna do, which is hilarious.
But he also mentions how he just has a vague idea of when The Elder Scrolls 6 will drop. It doesn't seem like it's locked down even then. But I personally think they probably have a year in mind. I think even Todd Howard knows when the target year is. And I do think context around this Phil Spencer quote does make it a little bit less damning. I mean, even right off the bat, the full quote is technically a lot less definitive. So we're talking about it being likely 5+ years away. So right off the bat, he's adding a qualifier there. It's likely 5 years away, not definitely 5+ years away. And what was going on and being talked about during the trial at this point does feel very relevant, at least to me, as an incredibly biased YouTuber who does have a large financial incentive in The Elder Scrolls 6 coming out next year. Because at this stage of the trial, the FTC lawyers were trying to lock things down around exclusivity. The Elder Scrolls 6 being an Xbox exclusive and that being bad for competition, which of course helps their case. And if you start to read some of the context, you could see that Phil Spencer was basically worked down to that Elder Scrolls 6 is 5+ years away quote. It began with, it's many years away, but it's a game we have announced we would begin working on. 2, I think we've been a little unclear on what platforms it will launch on given how far out the game is. It's difficult for us right now to nail down exactly what platform that game will launch on. And as I said with the Elder Scrolls 6, it's so far out it's hard to understand what the platforms will even be at this point. It's the same team that's finishing Starfield, which comes out this September, and then finally we get, so we're talking about it being likely 5+ years away. I think context devalues that 2028 prediction, particularly when some of the other clues point towards 2026, or I think 2027 is a real possibility. Bethesda and Xbox obviously want to get this game very right. It's going to be one of their biggest releases of the decade, so then taking that extra 6 months to a year and pushing things to 2027 just feels very possible. I think a lot of us are just assuming they might need a little extra time for this one, and they'll take it if needed. But honestly, let me know in the comments.
Bro, these blood effects, my 12-year-old nephew would like this.
That's a lot of the evidence for release dates that we know right now. Where do you lie? Are you more believing Phil Spencer of a 2028 or later? Or are you more in the 2026 or 2027 camp as many find themselves in now? And there are a few other interesting factors to note here. We saw from a video about a SAG-AFTRA strike over AI in video games, particularly around voice work.
No.
Yeah, the Elder Scrolls 6 is definitely taking us to weird corners of the internet. But in this video, the creator Mugen mentions a private Discord with a bunch of SAG members, and one of them mentions an Elder Scrolls 6 voice acting audition appearing in December of 2024. That could indicate something around development, although I wouldn't read too deeply into it. And honestly, what I've been speculating could end up having an impact on the release of the Elder Scrolls 6 is the new Xbox console. Over the past week and even months, a bunch of leaks around the new Xbox have been going live. Even just earlier this week, Xbox announced a new partnership with AMD that's going to power this console. But many insiders, such as Jez Corden, are predicting a 2027 release year for
what are we doing again? We're talking about, Xbox finally is going to be able to run games at more than 5 FPS. Yay. Really?
Or the next-gen Xbox. And to be clear, this is pure grain of salt speculation by me. I honestly haven't seen anyone else speculate this, but I could just see a new Xbox coming out having an impact on the release of this game. Maybe Microsoft wants the Elder Scrolls 6 as a next-gen launch exclusive, or at least exclusive to PC and Xbox on launch. Well, I think that would help you sell quite a few of whatever this next-generation Xbox ends up being. Or maybe on the flip side, Bethesda wants to double dip just like Rockstar. Drop the Elder Scrolls 6 on current gen in 2026, and then release an upgraded version in 2027 for an additional fee. No matter what happens, the Elder Scrolls 6 is a really big game, one of Xbox's largest and most anticipated releases this decade. So I could totally see how a new console could end up having an impact on that release date. But when are we realistically going to see a new trailer for The Elder Scrolls 6? Well, honestly, that's the fun part. We really have no idea. But also, maybe later this year? We're in this weird unknown period with Bethesda right now. In the lead up to Fallout 76, we can predict not only the day, but down to the hour when a teaser trailer would drop. Now we really just have no idea. I said we might see an Elder
I'm by the way for the opinion that the Elder Scrolls 6 should be canceled. I don't want to deal with this shit. Okay? Because it's gonna be so annoying. Okay? The Xbox Bethesda fanboys are gonna slowly coalesce into one, and that's gonna be like the most cringe thing ever. And every time I probably will talk about the Elder Scrolls in the upcoming years when it's actually closer to being finished, it's going to be the same as Starfield. The people are going to be, how dare you? How dare you say that people can have the ability to predict patterns? Something like pattern recognition. How dare you? It doesn't work. Okay? The cope is going to be unreasonable. And it's going to be pretty painful how stupid a lot of people are going to be with this.
Elder Scrolls 6 trailer at the summer showcase this year because it's exactly what they did with Starfield. That game saw trailers in 2021 and 2022 and finally a direct in 2023 to accompany their release. So if the Elder Scrolls 6 is a 2026 or 2027 game, and they follow the same marketing as Starfield, we should be getting trailers now. But at the same time, we might just not. Of course, with their most recent release with Oblivion, it was the polar opposite, and we had no marketing and just a shadow drop. So going forward with the
The shadow drop was marketing. We all know it.
Elder Scrolls 6, the real answer is we don't know when the next trailer is. But based off some of these timelines being established, this year or next year's summer showcase were perfectly reasonable guesses. And a far more fun theory that is starting to pop up is we still could get a trailer, but later in 2025. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, current speculation is the rise of internal rumors or talks about the Elder Scrolls 6 is theorized to be from the game being shown internally a lot more. What if they're preparing to have another teaser coming at the Game Awards in December? 15 years ago, Skyrim was revealed in this exact same way. Honestly, the Skyrim reveal didn't show much, it was more just like, hey, Skyrim's coming and it's coming soon. With this one, I honestly have no idea. It would certainly be really cool for them to repeat something similar in 2025, particularly if they are targeting a 2026 release, but this is all just pure guessing and speculation. We really don't know what they're going to do with marketing for
Todd Howard comes in a bunch of people with robes, are all bigger than him. Makes sense.
the Elder Scrolls 6. But if you do want things to be a bit more concrete on the speculation side, setting is one of the safest things to speculate about when it comes to the Elder Scrolls 6, because it was very likely locked down at the time of this teaser and pretty much all of the interviews I've been citing. Todd Howard mentioned in the Lex Friedman interview in 2022 that setting and tone of the game are often the first thing.
So one of the biggest problems I should say about Elder Scrolls 6 is the fact that it's pretty much currently concrete that it's going to be in Hammerfell. Because Hammerfell is the easiest place to impact that diversity upon everyone else. And, pretend that it's not being forced down your gullet.
Things decided on in development. He even describes how they've known about the beginning, like the intro of the Elder Scrolls 6, for a very long time now. And Todd Howard has made it clear that even in this teaser, it does hint at some kind of location. Right now, the prevailing theory is that the Elder Scrolls 6 will take place in Hammerfell and maybe also High Rock. And there are quite a few factors going into this, including some from Bethesda themselves. What is perhaps a giveaway that, yeah, this is Hammerfell is just the teaser trailer itself. Hammerfell features an arid desert landscape with major coastal sections, almost resembling North Africa. That is exactly what we're seeing in this trailer. And a few years ago, one Reddit user named James9000.
Hey, at least how bad can it be? At least we have a reason for the population being zero white, and we're gonna have a reason also for, a little bit of that anti-white racism going on. That's lore accurate at least.
Went out of bounds on the Skyrim map to roughly the area Hammerfell would appear in, and lo and behold, it looks incredibly similar to what can be seen in this teaser trailer. And even just geographically, this all lines up pretty well with some of the other major locations. One of the other really big clues is this New Year's Eve map from Bethesda. They tweeted out in 2020 saying, transcribe the past and map the future, along with a cutoff with a Skyrim map and 3 lights surrounding it. This yielded a ton of speculation, because it just feels like this is a clue. This is a custom-made scene for a tweet, and one of the candles is right next to the Hammerfell listing. So a really common interpretation of this is the past is being represented by this light. It's next to a stack of ESO collector coins, which is weird and does feel significant somehow. ESO is not made by Bethesda Game Studios, but ESO is set around 1,000 years before the events of Skyrim, so it being represented as the past would make sense. Skyrim gets a light as the present, technically not mentioned in the tweet, but yeah, it's the current game, that just also makes sense. And finally, Hammerfell has a light that almost...
By the way, I also think this is fucking reaching to the highest, okay? Because it kind of makes sense that if your light source is one small... what the hell is this, a candle? A glowy rock? That you're gonna have to probably have more than one glowy rock. The way that they do it. So, I mean, okay.
Not mentioned in the tweet, but yeah, it's the current game, that just also makes sense. And finally, Hammerfell has a light that almost certainly represents the future, aka the location of the next major game with the Elder Scrolls 6. And one of the other really big clues that, yeah, this is probably a Hammerfell set game, is the sort of weird cropping of this map. This is not the full map of Skyrim. They basically took off a huge section on the east side. One of the major reasons to do that is so you could actually show Hammerfell on this. It feels quite deliberate that this is teasing something. In Starfield's 2021 teaser trailer, you can briefly see an outline of something on the side of the ship's control panel. Upon closer inspection, many fans believe this resembles the High Rock and Hammerfell area of Tamriel, perhaps just literally being the map of the Elder Scrolls 6 viewed from a high level. In the Elder Scrolls Castles, which had early access in 2023, but its full release in 2024, so right in the midst of Elder Scrolls 6 development ramping up.
The cope is insane.
Here, you're able to build 2 types of castles, either a Redguard style or a Breton style. The Redguard are predominantly from Hammerfell, while Bretons are predominantly from High Rock. During Skyrim's opening, one of the other prisoners talks about Hammerfell.
If they hadn't been looking for you, could have stolen that horse and been halfway to Hammerfell. You there.
And after killing your first giant spider with Hadvar, he will say,
That's how it's done.
What next, giant snakes?
Hammerfell is known to have giant snakes like the sand serpent you could even find in ESO. And Bethesda does like to tease future games in past ones. The Blades were awaiting the next Dragonborn in Oblivion, and in Fallout 3, Bethesda left heavy teasers for the setting and even some of the major factions in Fallout 4. Perhaps these mentions of Hammerfell in Skyrim are a similar tease. It was released just 3 years after Fallout 3 after all. It might have just taken them a little bit longer than they expected to get around to that Hammerfell game. And even just looking at the Elder Scrolls Online in general, one of the few provinces never fully added in and which just doesn't get a ton of content is Hammerfell. Many fans speculating that they're leaving this untouched so Bethesda Game Studios can debut it with the Elder Scrolls 6. I think there's a lot pointing towards Hammerfell at the very least, with High Rock being more of a maybe, but if nothing else, we almost certainly know there's going to be a game with some kind of arid desert setting. We've seen photo scans of rock faces that are from a desert landscape. Emil, the design director at Bethesda Game Studios, posted this photo in a head wrap.
Oh god, gotta hate Emil so much, honestly. He's the guy who was responsible for the epic story of Starfield, and who is gonna be responsible for the epic story of Elder Scrolls 6. He's literally Todd Howard's best man, effectively. And he's a complete weirdo and a lunatic. He has gone on 2 separate Twitter tirades to attack the people for not having enough, I forgot what kind of illiteracy he's talking about, but some kind of magical illiteracy that we gamers don't have, and that's why we're too stupid to understand how great and epic and amazing, and how he should be put on a throne and loved as a god, he should be for making Starfield's story. We're just too stupid to understand how amazing the story of Starfield and Shattered Space was. It was a masterpiece. But you're just too stupid. I'm too stupid. Everyone's just too stupid. Emil is the only one who sees the light. Yeah, that's unironically the guy who is in charge of the story for Elder Scrolls 6. Are you excited? Are you expecting big things? I am. I am expecting big fails.
and even a Bethesda employee's Pinterest featured a plethora of photos supporting this exact same style. So while yeah, it technically could be anywhere, we definitely have a lot of clues pointing towards Hammerfell at the very least, and maybe some pointing towards High Rock, and while other locations have definitely been speculated about even beyond these two, it's often with not nearly as much evidence, so I'm mostly just focusing on these. But then we have the more fun part. What sort of features could we expect to see in the Elder Scrolls 6? For better or for worse, we know pretty concretely that this game's going to be using Creation Engine 2, with the release of Oblivion on a hybrid Unreal Engine 5 and Gamebryo, along with just the general criticisms about NPC visuals in Starfield. Many fans have been hoping that Bethesda is going to switch things up to Unreal Engine or even another engine altogether, but I would say that is incredibly unlikely. It's quite late into development to be changing engines, and Creation Engine 2 was built with the Elder Scrolls 6 in mind. Speaking to the Telegraph in 2021, Todd Howard said, "The new Starfield technology, Creation Engine 2, is sort of built for both. That being both Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6, it's like a new tech base. Every game will have some new suites of technology, so Elder Scrolls 6 will have some additions onto Creation Engine 2 that game is going to require. This is likely at least in part a reference to two major new features in the Elder Scrolls 6. This is something Bethesda likes to establish fairly early on for their projects.
You know, getting in the throes of it or wrapping it up, probably by the midpoint of one game, we've had enough conversations to understand what the next one's going to be. What are the big ticket, like, where's it set? What's the tone? Is there a big ticket feature or two that make it really unique?
And that quote has fueled a lot of...
And if you're wondering if tone can be gay, the answer is obviously yes.
The ongoing speculation. With Starfield, we got shipbuilding as well as 1,000 planets to explore.
Dude, people glaze the shipbuilding so hard, even though the shipbuilding is actually really bad. Yeah, you have a bunch of stuff that you can put on the ship through, but the shipbuilding is really, really not good. It's the systems for building the ships are bad. People are gonna try and probably fight this if they're Starfield fans, like, shipbuilding is the best part of the game. Well, it's the part of the game the least people cared about, that's for one, which is very telling considering people didn't care about the game in general. And two, no, the menus, the ways that everything works for shipbuilding is actually super fucking weak. It's really bad. It's really not intuitive in the slightest sense. And, well, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Survey, and build on. What are the two or so big ticket new features coming for the Elder Scrolls 6? And whatever this feature is could end up being pretty advanced and potentially even in planning for a while. All the way back in 2016, just as the Elder Scrolls 6 was revealed as being in the works by Bethesda, Todd Howard did say this: "We think very long term. We're not a developer that is going to rush something like this out, any of our games. So when you think about it, what is the future of that kind of game? We have a pretty good idea of what it would be, and it's just going to take technology and time that we really don't necessarily have right now." So to me, this would suggest that at least one of the big features Todd Howard was hoping for is technologically intensive. It's something that's really only possible thanks to some of these modern upgrades. And one of the big features fans are hopeful for is proper castle building. And honestly, a few things point towards this being possible, including Todd Howard. Building in Bethesda Game Studios games has sort of become a mainstay feature now. We of course...
Yeah, every Bethesda game that makes a new feature, no matter how scuffed and bad it is, aka settlement building in Fallout, it gets put into every other game. Like shipbuilding, we're gonna have, by the way, most likely, some sort of shipbuilding or a system that was based off of shipbuilding, because, again, if it's in Starfield, it's gonna be in Elder Scrolls 6. So maybe you're gonna have Pimp My Horse, who honestly knows.
Course had a very light version of this with building up your own home in Skyrim with the Hearthfire DLC. It seems like that really kicked things off and may have even had broader plans, but we saw the same concept further expanded in both Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Fallout 4 settlement system in particular feels like a Bethesda vision realized. Sure, fans didn't love it, but Bethesda clearly intended for that to be a major portion of Fallout 4, with Starfield really just being a continuation of what was there, although honestly some of the...
Yeah, and people... Dude, again, a continuation with that was always there, already there, true. That people hated.
These features are underbaked in Starfield compared to their Fallout 4 versions. And even in the newest Elder Scrolls game, the Elder Scrolls Castles, it's all about building up a custom castle and establishing a dynasty. So it feels probable for something like this to come in the Elder Scrolls 6, and Todd Howard's original Skyrim notes from almost 18 years ago may give us some insights into what is actually coming here. These were published some years ago in a Bethesda documentary, but do list out some of Todd Howard's desires for Skyrim as they were developing that game, including things like dragons and Radiant quests, but also a stronghold, a freeform castle/dungeon fortress the player makes and recruits people into. This is going to depend somewhat on what faction you're in, and could even be shared with other players, which Todd Howard envisioned would bridge the gap between the actual game and modding. That sounds a lot like building a proper full-scale castle in Skyrim, which of course is something we just never got, likely due to some of the technical limitations at the time, but with Bethesda's continued investment into building and this obviously being a goal of Todd Howard's, I would fully expect to see it in the next game. Even that sharing castle blueprints could also end up being a really nice social feature. But something that's probably going to get a lot of you excited, one of the other things mentioned are more dynamic and reactive factions. During that Lex Friedman interview, Todd Howard talks about simulations in their games and how in the future they want this to improve.
And the stuff that we're looking at in the future, our plan is to push that even more, to think about how these things exist in the world first. And we do some of this, but even more so in the future to say, how do these things exist? Take like a faction in the world. What is their role in the world? As opposed to just their role is for the player to join it, go through a bunch of quests and become the head of the faction.
The irony is the things that he's saying here are not how any of the Bethesda games actually fucking play out, except for New Vegas. Which is the super irony of this situation. He's trying effectively to say, the Brotherhood of whatever is not actually just the Brotherhood of whatever. It's more than something the player joins and gets quests in. It also has an impact on the world, which is not even remotely true for modern day Bethesda and how they do things. Sad, really sad.
Think a little bit deeper about the simulation and what would the Mages Guild be doing in a fantasy world? Or the fight?
Probably nothing. Knowing how these things pan out. Anyway, that was Juice at 10 out of 10. Bye!